Welcome to the only wrestling podcast that covers the WWE developmental system from its inception to modern day. From OVW to MCW to HWA, Deep South, FCW, and much more. Hosted by Brian Asbury and Mortimer Blankenship. Now let's dive into what could have been, what should have been. Welcome to Developmentally Speaking.
Hey, before we get in this episode, can you do us a favor? Will you go ahead and subscribe to the channel?
Will you ring that notification bell?
And if you would, give this video a like. Well, enough of that mumbo jumbo. Let's get to the episode.
Let's talk developmentally speaking, glow up, and connecting through wrestling.
Hey everybody, I'm Morty.
And I'm Brian.
And this is...
Developmentally speaking.
And as you can see on today's episode, we have the one and only...
Les Thatcher.
How you doing?
I'm doing okay, and some people say, thank God there's only one. You know? Sometimes I think that, too.
I know I've thought that about myself a few times. Thank God there's only one Morty. But then again, I'm not the only Morty now. I became Morty, and then 2 years later, Rick and Morty came out, and everybody's like, oh, you named yourself after that? No, I didn't. I came before the show. But that's besides the point. Go ahead.
So this is Les Thatcher. Les ran the HWA, one of the developmental territories back in the day. What was were you mainly WCW guys, or how did the HWA come about?
They never actually. We used some WCW
Yeah.
guys on shows and events, right?
Mm-hmm.
They had never figured out a way. I mean, we signed a deal.
Yep.
We moved into a larger facility, et cetera, et cetera. Got everything worked out, and we had Nash and those guys, the kids that were, that were with him. We had them in for shows and stuff, but we never actually. I think the whole idea was for it to pick people up and guys who weren't at the power plant,
Mm-hmm.
and feed them into us. But then WCW started rupturing money at a rapid rate, so they had to start cutting back. So, but we were, so there we were. It was the deal. The deal was great. It just didn't last that long. That was the worst part of it.
And this was right as WCW was closing, and it was hemorrhaging money.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah.
So then WWE buys out WCW, and then you were still part of developmental at that time? Or did they come back a little bit later on?
Well, the whole developmental thing started, actually, the first to approach me was WWF. And Bruce Pritchard had been down at OVW. I had been working with, Jimmy and Danny and I worked together anyway.
Mm-hmm.
We've been longtime friends. But anyway, Bruce had been down at OVW, so he got a car and came up to Cincinnati. And we sat down and started talking, right? And so I thought we'd come to a deal. But in some big companies, things work awfully slow, right? So I'm sitting waiting for something to happen. And all of a sudden, my phone rings. And on the other end of that phone is WCW. And Gary Jelster, he and JJ were calling. And Gary said, I think WWF is reading our mail. And I said, what are you talking about? Right? Well, JJ and I were talking about, expanding. And your name came up, and we thought, yes, we want. And somebody said, well, they think he's already with WWE or WWF at the time. And I said, no, we've talked, but nobody's signed anything. Well, before you sign a thing, we're sending you a plane ticket. We want to see you in Atlanta on Friday. So I flew to Atlanta, went to the office, and basically they said, what, in case you were to sign with us, what would you be interested in? So I laid out what, would work for me. We went to lunch, came back. You remember, this was when they had the interim president or CEO of WCW, and he was an accountant, right? But a real nice guy. Anyway, JJ and Gary took me, introduced me to him. Everything went set back and sat down. We said, okay, let's do it, right? And their offer was better than what WWF had offered. So I said, okay, good. So I called, and told the guys at WWF, I've got a better deal. And like JR said, hey, you got to do what's best for your family, and we will work together again down the line. Of course, he didn't know, nor did I, how soon that would be.
Yeah.
But that's how it all started. They both wanted to work with me, but the best offer came from WCW.
And then how quickly after they folded did the WWF deal come about?
Well, the deal was, they had contacted me. It wasn't that long after, but the deal was, they had the developmental deal in Memphis for a while.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess the best I know, Jerry Lawler, basically brokered that because, Jerry Lawler is Memphis, Tennessee. And, but he wasn't all that involved, apparently. So I was told, keep it to yourself. We've given them a deadline either to get it together or we're pulling a deal. And I don't believe they're going to get it together, and of course they didn't. So we signed, I forget, I could have been more than maybe 6 weeks or so after they contacted me, and we worked it all out. So we went from there. So we weren't between big companies for that long.
Yeah.
Although I was, a lot of people think, oh my God, he's going to close his doors, right? Because we'd moved into a 6,000 square foot facility, and they had done some remodeling to suit us and all that, right? So I'm thinking, well, we can only sit here like this for just so long, and then, so anyway, then WWE came knocking, so we signed with them and went on, and that worked out great. I mean, we had some amazing developmental talent. We had 3 to 5 of the guys off the main roster that weren't being utilized at that time to come in and work with the kids. Plus, we had my crew, which I had already, that had walked in the door. They weren't developmental guys. And between the two crews, I had more good talent than honestly. I'm not a big exponent of 4-ways and 5-ways and 30-man tags and all that nonsense. I'm not a carnival barker, but we were doing a lot of this just to get everybody on the card,
Mm-hmm.
because we had almost as many good quality workers out of HWA as I got, from the developmental deal, plus the top guys. So I'll tell you the truth, as it went on, if WWE had decided that they want to bring my entire cruiserweight crew north and put them on one of the big shows, they'd have made it without ever missing a beat. I mean, I had one of the best damn crews out there. I really, and cruiserweights, Shark Boy, Matt Stryker, Unibrow, Matt Stryker, not the other one, BJ Whitmer, Shark Boy, Shannon Moore, Jamie Noble, on and on and on, right? Wow. So Chad Cobb, I had a hell of a crew.
Mm-hmm.
And a couple of years ago, BJ Whitmer and I sat down and went through some of the old shows, the TV shows. And he said, damn, I didn't realize what a crew we had. I said, yeah, we did, and I'm proud of those guys. I mean, I really was. It was, we ran good shows. We had expanded by the time that the reason they decided, the word came to me, it's nothing you did wrong or nothing you didn't do, right? It's just that we are appeasing the stockholders. So at the time they had cut main roster talent. They had cut people in the office, at the tower. And so, they only needed one developmental crew. And of course that in turn moved to Florida, and so Danny and Jimmy were out the door too. But we had a hell of a crew. I'm proud of those guys. And of course, during that period of time, we were running, when I was with WWE, the last Pillman show, I was under contract to WWE. And so, in fact, on that Pillman show, the first time that Randy Orton and John Cena ever locked up in a wrestling ring anywhere was on the fourth Pillman show in 2001. Yeah.
That's awesome.
That's what I love about the developmental system is like people outside of Cincinnati didn't get to see HWA. People outside of like Kentuckiana didn't get to see OVW, and there was a lot of magic like in the developmental territory and all that talent, and it was just so much more than what you were seeing on TV, and it seemed like you would be so much more invested in developing these guys than just giving them a week and then you're done, you're switching, whatever. Like there's so much like passion and love and truly helping and develop people that were in the developmental system at that time. Everybody was hungry.
Yeah, well, like we did our TV at OVW on Sundays, and then we'd bring a rough cut. Danny edited the show before it ever went, to air, or of course an edited copy went to Stanford as well. But we would bring a rough cut back to the gym, and then on Monday after we had trained, for example, Val Venus might have been with me, Haku, D'Lo Brown, myself. Anyway, we were like the judges on America's Got Talent or something, right? We'd sit down with the developmental guys, right, and break the matches down, and they'd hear 4 or 5 different versions of, what everybody thought. So it was really good in that respect. By the time that we left WWE, we had expanded to 16 shows a month. So yeah, actually almost.
That's a few.
We had talked to Fox Sports Ohio at one point, and the deal would have been we would have been on Friday night, and Fox Sports Ohio covers obviously the whole state of Ohio, but it bled down into Kentucky as well. So with the opportunity of maybe doing that, I contacted Jimmy and Danny, said, look, if we get on this and we bleed over into a town you guys are running, all you got to do is send me, a card and we'll plug that as well, right? And we're, trying to work it out. And then I got word from up above, from Stanford, maybe you shouldn't get too big, And I don't know if it's paranoia or what, but I'm thinking I couldn't be getting this big without you, right? So it's like I'm trying. Believe me, I have never been drunk enough or high enough or anything else enough to think I'm going to war with a WWE, right? I've never been that crazy, but we had some good options, but it was a good run. I mean, we had great shows. Talk about a place to learn, though. When Benoit was coming off the neck surgery, he came up and spent several weeks with us to get back in shape, so the guys had a chance to work with him. Eddie Guerrero, when he had been cut loose by Vince, the one time, and he and Vicky had separated for a while, he had called Brian Adams and said, hey, ask Les if it's all right if I come up. I'll help him train the kid. I'll work some of the and he said, but it'll keep me out, I'll keep me straight and I can stay in shape. When Brian said it, I said, put him on the first plane out. Yes, sir.
Absolutely.
Let him come.
Yeah.
So the funny thing is we ran an in-house show on Tuesday night. We call it Tuesday Night Showcase. We could put maybe 100 people in our gym, right? We had a WCW ring and a WWE ring both set up. And on the show night, we would pull out the WCW ring, put in chairs and so forth. So we could put about 100 people. We charged $5 a night. But what was the best kept secret in the world? I mean, we had Mysterio in at the time. We had Guerrero. We had Benoit. Plus the guys on the main roster. And you could see them all right there for $5 on Tuesday.
Man, I wish I would have been there. That's awesome. Like, we talk about OVW coming to Seymour, and that was our wrestling as a gift for me. Because I would watch WWF on TV and all that, but my parents never. I never went to a WWF show until I was in college, so the live stuff was the developmental territory OVW for me, and like you said, you become so invested in it because the workers are so invested in it, and it brings a quality that I don't think even the top shows now bring. And
I won't disagree with you.
right, I really don't, and that's why developmentally speaking exists, is because the developmental territories, and I don't want to bash what they have now with the training center and everything, but that's just a factory to me. It's just bringing someone in, and this is your cookie cutter training. Don't worry about being unique. Just go do it.
You know what about that though? I was a guest coach for a week down there a couple years ago, and knowing the system, WWE, having worked with them and around them, and one thing and another. When I sat down with Matt Bloom the first day, I said, is there anything special you want me to cover or do while I'm here? Or better still, more importantly, is there anything you want me to steer clear of? Because I understand if there's nothing else about WWE, it's about control, right? He said, you're here to impart knowledge, do what you do. So,
Nice.
And it was great working with the guys and without somebody looking over your shoulder. Plus, there's some great coaches there too at the time.
Absolutely.
Steve Carino, Johnny Moss, Terry Taylor, Scotty was there. I'm trying to think. Good guys, and the equipment and what they have to offer. My God, and it was a hell of an experience, and but again, like you're saying, when I was there were 85 kids in the system, boys and girls. And it's, I don't quite understand why they can't come out of there, and it shouldn't be a factory in terms of cranking out, assembly line. It shouldn't be. This business is becoming that, but it shouldn't, because if there was ever a place for improv, it's professional wrestling.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I broke it. Well, July the 4th of this year will be my 62nd anniversary in this goofy business. And I wouldn't know how to call a match from in the back and go out and repeat it. I don't have that kind of memory and don't want it. I mean, honestly, the reason, because when I coach, I'll tell guys, you're going to sit in the back and work out this match. It's going to, you and your opponent are going to think it's the greatest thing in the world, right? And then you're going out in front of people you've never seen before in your life. Can you be sure they're going to buy in? I mean, that goes back to the night we were working, 5, 6 nights, 7 nights a week. Me and somebody else could blow the roof off the building here in Knoxville on Friday night, take that same match to Nashville the next night, and the people might sit on their hands. So you better be able to change and create on the fly, And you don't even want to. We spent an hour and a half talking about paint by numbers, because it's, I'll tell you, one of my pet peeves is when somebody the timing has been lost because of the planning in the back. And setting your time. In other words, when I see somebody going to the top and the guy or girl, for that matter, that they're going to come off with a knee or something, and their opponent is standing bent at the waist in the middle of the ring with their head kind of cocked to see if they got to the top yet, I want to scream. I mean, I do, because both those people are in charge of the timing of that particular spot. If I'm the guy that's going to do the jumping, I should be watching the guy. If my opponent is getting up too quick, I need to get to the top quicker.
Yeah.
If I'm the opponent, I'm never going to stand up, and I know I've got to face you to get the clothesline or the crossbody or whatever, but I'm not going to come up facing you. I'm going to come up so I can catch you in my peripheral vision and see where you're at and what you're doing.
Absolutely.
Because I want to turn into that. I want you to launch before I even make my turn. Wow, now there's a surprise. I'm 81 years old, guys, and in a 20-foot ring, if I'm on the floor and you go 20 feet in the other direction, hit the ropes, and you're coming to dive, I'm afraid I'm not going to be there. And I'm certainly no speed demon. It's 3 steps one way or the other.
Right.
And you're going to go flat on the floor. So in that situation, the same thing applies. You bump me outside, I'm going to come up catching you in my peripheral vision. If I'm up too quick, I may stagger and drop back to a knee and come up, but I'm turning into those ropes. I'm not going to stand there with my arms out saying, come on, baby, jump on me.
Right. Yeah.
That drives me nuts. It does.
Absolutely. And I'm sure another thing that you could agree with is they're too worried about what they're doing in the ring to actually connect with the audience. That's one thing that drives me crazy.
Everybody's got to get their stuff in, damn it.
All right.
Too often they're entertaining themselves.
Yeah. Uh-huh. I agree.
And I hope you guys aren't, I'm not trying to be vulgar here, but I've said to people, I said, it's almost like public masturbation. You know, you guys are entertaining yourselves. You're not paying any attention. Did the audience buy into that? Oh, are we supposed to look and see? Yeah, it's a good idea.
Absolutely.
They bought tickets, right?
Yes.
Well, you know, it's like this, hey, we got this great spot, the boys in the back pop. I got two, you know, first of all, the boys in the back don't buy tickets. And second of all, if you screw this up, they're not paying your hospital bills either.
Right.
So the boys in the back need to stay in the back. You're entertaining the people in the seats, or you should be.
Yep. Yeah. It's like Rip Rogers always tweets about that.
Yeah.
Constantly.
I
Don't be
love
doing these
Rip.
high flying. Don't be doing this. You know.
Yeah.
He
may butcher the King's English, but he's definitely knows what he's talking about, right?
Yep. You know, growing up in
When I mentioned that, we did the last big there's a guy promoting the Fan Fest in Charlotte again, but when Greg Price promoted them, right, we did 4-day training camps with shows, and the last one we did, it was myself, Dr. Tom, Rip, Nigel McGuinness, who else? Lance Storm.
Wow.
So the 5 of us were running the camps, right? And Rip, my wife and my granddaughter were there, right? Charlotte, so she had come to the hotel to stay with my wife and I. Well, they're wandering around through the exhibits and everything. But when they'd step inside where we were training, and I'd go over and elbow Rip and say, my 13-year-old granddaughter's here. Okay. Then he couldn't think of anything to say. More than 4 letters. I'm teasing Rip if you're listening. I love it.
When we took
But
him,
then when they leave, I go over and elbow him and say, they're gone, Rip. So you go back to being yourself.
Yep.
we took him to the Squared Circle Expo, and Von Lilas was with us. And Rip would just go up and he talked to everybody like that on the floor, and there's fans everywhere. And Von's like, Rip, you can't talk like that anymore. Not in public.
Yeah, for sure. It was, but you know, growing up in Seymour, growing up around Rip, you know, I'm primarily a wrestling manager, but when I wrestle a match, I guarantee you, I'm not taking 500,000 bumps, but I could say that even as a manager, I've had more reactions in my matches by caring about what the crowd is seeing than just going out there and doing my stuff.
Well, you know, let me say this about managers. I see in some of these indie shows, the manager's taking 3 or 4 bumps in a match, right? And my answer to all that is, do you know how Corny or Gary Hart or any of these guys got their heat? By not doing anything,
Right.
by acting like they were going to interfere and not doing it and building that anticipation. And that's another thing that's missing in the business today, anticipation.
Mm-hmm. Got to build it up until finally it happens. Absolutely.
Yeah, one of the great bookers of all time, Leo Garibaldi, always said, you always give the people what they want, just never when they expect it.
That's so nice. I like that.
And then I think the element of surprise today is more important than it was 50 years ago. Because they came in the door believing 50 years ago. But I guarantee you, you know, that if you do it right, you'll make the people pop again, you know. Well, you know, let's go back to months, years was it when Lesnar split Randy Orton open, right? And the talker, was it a shoot? Did he get mad at Randy? Was it real? I don't know either. But the point is, it got more reaction because you didn't know.
I remember just being shocked. Like, I was like, "Whoa, he beat the living crap out of him!" Just, but you know, and yeah, I think I even called you and was like, "Dude, was that a shoot? What just happened?" And you know, I've been doing it for 12 years at the time, and I'm like, I don't know. I love that feeling. I love watching the little tidbits of wrestling that you get when you can question it and be like, wait a minute, was that part of it? Or you know, that's that makes, now that I've been in the business for so long, that makes wrestling almost feel like it did when I was a kid and thought it was real. You know, nothing will ever match that feeling of being a kid, seeing your heroes on TV. But that comes pretty damn close. Is being able to watch wrestling and be like, wait a minute, or getting that nostalgia hit.
Yeah, they talk about us old guys. You're what is this? Oh, you must be jealous because you can't do a quadruple somersault I'm not really. I can wrestle, so why would I be jealous that I'm not an acrobat? But the crazy thing is, I mentioned that deal in Charlotte. Lance Storm was there one morning at breakfast. He and I were talking. And Lance is, Christ, he's not even half my age yet. I know he's pushing 50, I guess. And I'm about 31 years older than he is. So he's not of the same generation, is my point. And he said to me, he said, if you were a kid again, would the product that you see today make you want to be a wrestler? And it didn't take me a second to say no, because I never wanted to be a comedian. I'm more interested in being a professional wrestler. And now, much younger as he is than he said the same thing. I wouldn't either. So,
it's true.
And what you got to understand too is, Corny says it all. We were all, talking about Marks. I was a fan from the age of 9. I mean, Buddy Rogers was the man. He was. I could strut like Buddy as a kid. I wanted my mother to bleach my hair, right? She wouldn't do it. And I look back and I say, thank God, because as a 10-year-old in school, I'd have been in the fighting every damn, because that would have been 1950 or 51, right? And guys weren't running around with their hair bleached blonde back then. So. But yeah, I mean that's why I fell in love with the business. You talk about breaking in. I broke in probably the first wrestling school that was open to the public, which was Tony Santos in Boston in 1960. I didn't know how to get in the damn business because it was a closed shop, right? And okay, kid, put on some size. Get some experience. Do this. Yeah, okay. Opened up a Wrestling Review magazine, and there was a story on Tony Santos, promoter in Boston, who was giving young athletes who aspired to be professional wrestlers a shot. Wrote him a letter. Yeah, guys, there were no cell phones, no internet back then. I wrote him a letter.
That's awesome.
I know it sounds like a Neanderthal, right? So he sent. In fact, I've got the trifold still that he sent me, right? With a picture of the ring and the whole 9 yards. $300 for 6 months.
Wow.
And so in February of 1960, I got on a Greyhound bus in Cincinnati and went to Boston. And trained with Tony for 6 months. And my first match was July the 4th, 1960. And I say to kids today, I said, when they smartened me up? When? July the 4th, 1960. Stop and think about it. I spent 6 months not being smart to the business, but training and working with guys.
Wow.
And yeah, well, the first few weeks, they'll hand you your ass. There's the story. To see if you're going to stick,
right? Because
they don't want you leaving and smartening other people up to the business, right? And the way they taught us to work was, it was clever. The coach would say, well, you two guys, let's walk through a match. Now, nobody is getting paid and nobody's going to win or lose, so don't put any pressure on. But put a top wrist lock on this guy or put a headlock on this guy, but don't hurt, So they're actually teaching us. And Corny's right. The guys back then could kick your ass, but they were loose as could be. Today, the guys beat the hell out of each other, and most of them don't know how to wrestle. So, I mean, it's true.
Yeah.
I've worked with Harley Race, Danny Hodge. You don't feel them. That's the art of our business.
Yeah.
Is to convince the people, not each other.
And it seems like when they do these guest training at the Performance Center, it's everybody that was associated with developmental before they made NXT. So you and like Serena Deeb and Mike Mondo and Rob Conway. It's everybody that went Dinsmore. It's everybody that went through it the old way that made all these stars, trying to teach all these new people. I mean, even back then, did you have as many people as they have in that Performance Center now? Like all at one time?
Well, but they have enough coaches, enough. Yeah. You could walk through if you could see that place.
Yeah.
I mean, damn,
So the ratio is probably the same.
Yeah.
If the ratio of workers to of trainees to coaches is probably about the same, then
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and the product that the company wants.
Yeah.
Realize part of the change. We talk about the guys in the ring, the guys laying the matches out in the back, and all that. But part of the change in the business has come from management, because more people that have never taken a bump are put in a position to call the shots. So realize the great bookers that I ever worked for. Well, I never worked for Rip, but Rip is a hell of a booker. I would be, I guess, a hell of a coach. Leo Garibaldi was a worker. Eddie Graham was a worker, right? George Scott was the great bookers of my era were all workers. So it wasn't like they read about it, watched it, or talked about it. They did it. So they knew, and listen, when I say that, I'm not, everybody's Tony Khan. Tony Khan, I'm sure he's a nice guy. I've never met him. I'm not going to sit here and tell you what I don't like about that company, because that would be as much as I do like. In truth, it must be the largest roster in the history of wrestling ever. He signed half of Jacksonville, Florida. I think, but he has an opinion, but he's and he's a fan, obviously. I know he was a tape collector, because I know Mike Johnson at PW Insider used to exchange, trade tapes with him. But that's not the same as being there, right? It's not the same as being in the middle of the ring, right? Right. It's like doing anything. You want to be a great insurance salesman, you better learn from a great insurance salesman, right? You don't go learn from a guy who read about it in the book.
Right.
So that's I think that's part of the change too,
That's very true. It doesn't make sense to bring in people who've never done it to teach it or to run the show, even.
I shouldn't. Jim Barnett was a smart promoter. Jim Crockett was a smart promoter. Neither one of them that I'm aware of ever took a bump, but they were smart, and they surround themselves with people who were smart internally and who they could learn from. And so so you learn with like any of us with time. But today I know it's you guys must see it too. There's so many little indie groups that, God, want to say, please stop. This is.
Yeah.
They're trained by incompetence. The booker isn't, and it's. I don't know. I don't know what it is half the time. But of course, that was another thing in the business that wasn't around years and years ago. There were some outlaw groups, but they stayed out of the big cities. They stayed away from the major promotions, because, you know, in a situation like that, the standard operation was, okay, well, these guys think they've got something going, so you take your best pistol, your best shooter, your policeman, as a Danny Hodge or Carl Gotch or whoever, Harley, whoever it happens to be, and you send them to this little outlaw group's matches. He buys a ticket, front row. He sits down, and when the outlaw champion gets in the ring, he stands up and says, "Hey, I'd like to take you on." Now, the champion has two ways to be embarrassed: by saying no, or getting his ass handed to him.
Yeah, absolutely.
He's not coming out on top one way or the other. So, you know, so there weren't a lot of little outlaw groups, you know, back then. There weren't.
Yeah, and I think I think you could agree. I've been lucky when it comes to my indie wrestling career so far, that the company I started with, it's been around for 25 years. Its booker has been in wrestling for going over 30 years now. And you know, I learned from someone who, you know, was actually a worker. And
At what level?
He was...
You don't give me a name, because I may be end up shooting him down after you get done talking.
He worked in OVW, USWA, and a little bit in ECW.
Okay.
Before,
All right,
was
then
it before?
He
it
had
was-
some major experience, but yeah. But there are guys out there trying to be trainers who
Right.
need training.
Right.
Yeah.
I
You know.
100% agree with that. Yeah, for sure.
I mean, they're not. Believe me. When I first started training wrestlers back in '92, I thought I went to my first indie show. Was the reason I had decided to go ahead and be a trainer. Beautiful Bobby Harmon, who was the original Beautiful Bobby in WWF years ago. He's a Cincinnati boy and a friend of mine, longtime friend of mine. He called me. I hadn't even thought about being a trainer. And he said, "There's a guy that's got a school in Cincinnati with an idiot for a trainer." I said, "Okay." And I said, "Why are you telling me?" He said, "Because I think you should be his trainer." I said, "You're out of your friggin' mind." Yeah. So he said, "Well, they've got a show over on the other side of town on Saturday." He said, "Do me a favor, come and go with me." So I said, okay, I had nothing else to do. So we go to this show. Long story short, nobody was in that ring. You know, I wasn't ready to say, yeah, this guy's got it. But I'm sitting with the guy who is the promoter and my friend Bob. The promoter's sitting on the other side, Bob, and Bob's next to me. So there's a match in the ring, and this guy goes out and gets a chair. And I can tell the way he's holding the chair and what he didn't know what to do with it. I thought, oh, hell. So he hits his opponent with the chair, and actually Colcox. You know, he didn't knock him out, but rung his bell enough that they finished the match, and the kid who got hit with the chair, they had to go out and get him out of the ring because he's walking around in circles, basically, right? But I knew when I saw the guy pick the chair up and the way he was holding it, he didn't know what the hell to do with it. And I said to Bob, I said, Jesus, he's not going to use that chair. And sure enough, he did. So I said to Bob, I said, ask the promoter, how long has this kid been training? So Bob leans over and asks, and it comes back to me. And he said, he's been to 6 sessions. I said, what? He doesn't even belong in a match. Never mind with a chair. So that's actually the only reason I decided to give it a try as a trainer.
Wow.
Right? I thought, and my first meeting with that group of kids was, boys, the bad news is you're starting from scratch because you haven't been taught anything that you need to retain.
Forget everything you thought you learned.
Yeah. You know how many guys, when Harley and Steamboat and I started doing the super camps, 3-day super camps, it's great. Well, Harley and I started out at CAC at Cauliflower Alley. We first time we worked together. I mean, we worked together over the years, numerous times, but as trainers. And we both stopped asking how many years, because we realized that they could have worked once a month and said 5 years, right? And still wouldn't have had, enough matches to matter. But it's just, you could tell the guys that hadn't been trained properly, right? And it's sad, and a lot of people think that well, Rip or me or Dr. Tom or Rudy Gonzalez or any of us who actually have a decent reputation, oh, you don't like those guys. It's not the guy, you know. I played a little basketball in high school. Would you like me to teach you to be an NBA player? Sure, you would. I'll take your money. I know as much about being an NBA player as some of these guys know about being a wrestling trainer, which is nothing. I mean, it's a whole different ball game anyway. And even if, everybody's not made to be a trainer. That's a fact. I mean, it's, when OVW was still in vogue, Corny had Bobby Eaton come in, to help with them. And you with Bobby Eaton, hell yes. But he had come to a camp that Dr. Tom and I had done. There was a show on Saturday night, and we were finishing the camp on Sunday, and he and Condrey came over to watch for a while. And Bobby walked up and whispered in my ear, I forget what it was about. He said, tell the kids to do this or that. And I said, well, you go ahead and tell them. Oh, I don't want to talk. You tell them. But as great a person as he was, as great a worker as he was, there was a communication thing, right? And let's face it, we all have, I know I've had the reputation of being a cold-hearted SOB, and I am at times, but I'm not your mother, and who's going to tell you you're the most handsome boy she's ever met, or the best, and the tallest, and et cetera, et cetera. I'm not your mother. I'm going to tell you the truth. Mm-hmm. And if you suck, you suck. I mean, it's,
Absolutely.
And you see, these guys have spent money, how much money, to find out they really, and then come to some of these camps with, not never mind me, but, with Dr. Tom or Lance Storm or somebody like that, and be told, you don't know what you're doing. Well, wait a minute, I paid Charlie Jones. Who the hell's Charlie Jones? Well, he used to wrestle under the mask as so-and-so and so-and-so.
Oh, man.
I had a kid actually come to HWA one time and tell me he had been trained by one of the original Assassins. And I said, Joe Hamilton or Tom Renesto? No, I don't know those names. He told me some guy's name, right? And I said, I got bad news for you. Not only were you not trained by one of the original Assassins, you don't even know one of the original Assassins.
Yeah, I just saw recently on Facebook that there was a company down in Tennessee that was doing a $45 seminar with the Masked Superstar, and it didn't look like Bill Eadie at all. So I think they were just having some guy put a mask on and be like, I'm a Masked Superstar. Here I am to train you. $45, please. What? That's crazy.
I don't like doing short, like 2 or 3 hour. I don't think the kids get. I mean, I get paid for it if I do it.
Right.
But I don't think they get anything out of it, quite frankly. I prefer when Harley and Steamer and I started. Well, Harley and I did the multi-day camps at CAC to start with, and we said, well, this is better than one day, right? So with the three of us, we started doing Friday, Saturday, Sunday. But for several reasons, the kids can learn more. More importantly, after the first day, they're more comfortable with the coaches. Mm-hmm. The second and third day, or just the second day if it's just a weekend. Also, the coaches have seen these guys for the first day, so now they know maybe what this guy needs, what his shortcomings are, or this guy's, and can feature and concentrate on those. And you can't do that in 2 or 3 hours. You can't do it in 3 or 4 hours, for that matter. So I don't really like to do camps like that, to be quite honest.
Right. That's It's great. I'm just thinking how awesome it would be to actually go to one of your camps for 3 days and just drink in the knowledge, because that that you talk about how doing a 2 or 3 hour seminar. I could tell you I've actually learned some stuff from those seminars, but it's to have 2 or 3 days as opposed to 2 or 3 hours.
Mm-hmm.
That would be amazing.
Well, it's not that you can't pick up something in 2 or 3 hours, but then the kids always want to hear a story.
Mm-hmm.
And if you've got a couple days, you can. And some of the teaching comes with a story, explaining why I want you to do this. Let me give you an example of that.
Absolutely.
Right?
For sure.
And yeah. So, yeah, it's plus for me, over 2 days, we can work on single matches, we work on tag matches, we can work on psychology, we work on timing, conditioning. That's one of the things that I offer if you have a weight room available to you, because I've done competitive bodybuilding and I've trained competitive bodybuilders. So I can help you set up a nutritional program or a weight training program.
That's awesome.
And which is more important today than it was years ago, obviously. But the more you offer, I think, the better. I mean, so many kids, I don't know, they come into this thing now, I think, well, I mentioned not being smart, 62 years ago when I got started. And part of the problem, I think, is when they come in smart. And there's no way to change that. But the point is, it's a show. I can be an actor. Until wow, that hurts. Yeah, it does.
Yeah, for sure.
And it's going to continue to hurt because there's no way to change that. But yeah, I think in modern day, I had a kid move from California to Cincinnati, graduated high school. His grandmother gave him the tuition fee to come to Cincinnati, and I suppose he was supposedly going to find a part-time job. He was 18 years old. Brought a bicycle and he was riding that. And after 2 weeks with us, he just disappeared. And I found he'd gone back home. It wasn't what he thought it was going to be. And it's not, and I'm not a guy, I know there's these places, come in and try out. Well, if you've never wrestled, I know what you can do, nothing. Right?
Yeah, exactly.
And you're going to pay me to show me you don't know anything. Right? Tryouts, $50 or something like that. No. Either you want it or you don't want it, and you're going to come in and you're going to work your ass off and give your time and effort, or you're not, But it's not just wrestling. There's scams out there and virtually everything. And it's just, I advise guys, if they're interested and so-and-so tells you he's a trainer, then you ask for references. Who have you trained?
Yeah.
Yeah,
that's very real.
And whatever.
So, you said that on July 4th, it's going to be 62 years.
62 years in the business, yes.
Wow. So the cool thing is, and people that are watching this at the release date realize that this is being released on July the 4th.
Is that right?
Yeah. So everybody that's watching this right now on July the 4th or even after, put in the comment section below and wish him a happy 62 years in this business, because this man is a legend in this business and has taught many greats. And we thank you for that.
Thank you. Well, I've had to do 20,000 different things in this business to stay for 62.
Yeah. Yep. But I think with that being said, I think we've had a great interview. We appreciate you. We're going to see you here in a few days, July the 9th.
Yes, in Sevierville, Tennessee.
It's going to be a good time. If you're watching this now, come down and say hi to us. We would love to see you there for sure.
Listen, come by. We might tell, we were talking, we mentioned the Pillman shows. We're going to have copies of the 20-year anniversary of the 4 Pillman shows for sale, plus HWA. He's also sending you copies of the HWA volumes 1 and 2.
Yep.
And yeah, Joe Dombrowski and I had a lot of fun putting those all together. And Joe does more of the play-by-play stuff, and I give the behind-the-scenes and stories about the guys and this and that. But if you've never seen the Pillman stuff, I am so proud of the boys that gave their time to work those shows, and we raised over $120,000 over 4 shows.
Fantastic.
And it was the only place in the universe that you could see WWE, WCW, and ECW all under the same roof in the same ring on the same night.
That's awesome. Well, once again, on behalf of Brian, I want to thank you, and of course myself, I want to thank you for coming on the show, spending time with us this evening, and also, coming to the convention with us. We're looking forward to it. And is there anything you'd like to say before we close here?
Well, I'm looking forward to hanging out with you guys in Sevierville on the 9th. And if anyone's interested, I'm more anxious to do more weekend camps. You can reach me, lesthatcher28@gmail.com, and I'll be more than happy to send you information. And yeah, come see us in Sevierville. And hey, thank you guys for having me on. I've enjoyed it and look forward to hanging out with you on the 9th.
For sure. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
All right. Peace out, guys.
Hey, everybody. It's Morty.
It's Brian.
And thank you for watching today's episode of Developmentally Speaking.
If you could, please click that subscribe button.
And don't forget to punch that bell icon so you can get notified whenever we go live or drop a new video every Monday. Well, thanks for watching, guys. And we'll see you on the next
Developmentally Speaking.